welcome to this episode of Gearist TV. Today on Gearist TV, we're going to be talking about the Fresh Foam 980 from New Balance. So if you're a gear geek at all, specifically a running shoe geek like myself, you know that things in the running shoe industry have been kind of interesting of late. Over the past few years, we've had the very minimalist, natural running crowd over here and products over here. Then we've had the traditional trainers in here, most likely with a larger drop or something like that. And now we've begun to see this shift to where there's maximalist shoes. We've got brands like Hoka One One, we've got Ultra coming out with a maximalist shoe, we've got the Brooks Transcend, we've got all these shoes that are taking advantage of larger stack heights and a lot more cushioning. Now, New Balance's first foray into this maxi world is the Fresh Foam. This is one of the most anticipated shoes of the last year or so, and is actually my personal and Gearist's first foray into the maximalist world. So I'm really excited to get you guys my opinion on this, and I was really excited to get to trying this. So here we go with the outsole. So before I get fully into the outsole, I want to tell you that I've got 60 miles roughly on these shoes, probably between 55 and 60 miles on these shoes right now. That being said, the reason I mentioned it is because how well the outsole is holding up. This is a single piece of blown rubber. Now what's interesting about that is that a lot of shoes, most shoes in fact, are going to have flex grooves somewhere on the outsole, and in the Fresh Foam there are none. There is one right here that is a little bit of a flex groove, but it's ironically in a part of the foot that doesn't flex. I mean, when was the last time your calcaneus bent unless it was breaking or something like that? So that's a really interesting thing, and I thought that this was going to decrease the flexibility of the shoe. But it didn't, and that's something I'm going to talk about in a second. First, let me point out the tread pattern. As you can see here, we know that New Balance has gone with the hexagonal, the honeycomb shape in the past. And we'll be talking about this a lot because it shows up a lot in this shoe. We know they've used the honeycomb shape in the past, and that's no different here. And I feel like that's why this shoe does have the flexibility that it does have. Now, the first thing that I would point out about it is that the honeycomb actually acts kind of like a mesh. Now, we all know that mesh, including the mesh on the upper here, which we're going to talk about in a little while, the mesh on the upper is that honeycomb, and that honeycomb can give, and it can bend, and it can flex in different directions. And that's exactly how, in my opinion, the flexibility of this outsole stays where it is. Because as you can see here, wonk, we can in fact fold this shoe in half. And in fact, if you really want to, you can actually kind of fold it far, far back into the heel, and that's a lot of foam underfoot, so it's very, very interesting. The durability, as I mentioned a second ago, was fantastic on the outsole here, and there's not a ton. I mean, it's not like a super, super thick layer of outsole. It's just a really well-built outsole, and I actually took this off-road a little bit on some dry trail. There's a trail version of this shoe that I'll tell you guys about. It's coming out in July of 2014. We hope to have it later, or excuse me, earlier than the launch date to be able to review it for you guys. But I can see this really working well in a trail adaptation, and we're going to talk about that a little more in other sections of this review. One of my favorite things about this outsole is that, as you can see, it is a full contact outsole. There are no gaps, there's no raised area for the arch. This gives excellent ground feel for the entire foot, and it also makes for a really quick and snappy transition should you be someone who lands more toward the rear of the foot, kind of back in the heel or the rear of the midfoot area. So that is a really excellent point, and that's the outsole. It's pretty basic, honestly, because it's that single piece of really flexible honeycomb pattern rubber. Good job on that, guys. Now for the midsole. That's this part right here, the actual Fresh Foam. This is where the maximalist part of this shoe lives. The midsole on the Fresh Foam 980 is made from a single piece of EVA foam. There are no different densities or no posting or anything like that trying to make it a stability shoe. This is certainly a neutral shoe, and we're going to touch on that in a second. There's not honestly very much to describe about it because it's a single piece of foam. As I mentioned, the one thing that is kind of cool, or one of the things that's kind of cool, is that this honeycomb pattern that we see on the outsole does show up again. You can see it all along here and all the way around the backside of the shoe and all this. This is this honeycomb and this hexagonal structure that we've seen again. Now what's interesting about it is that New Balance has made both convex and concave shapes. Concave being going inward, convex coming outward. And what you can see is that, for instance, this is the lateral side of the shoe, is that toward the rear of the foot and wrapping around about halfway, this is concave, and then right as you get to the midfoot, it becomes convex. And then likewise, the opposite happens on the medial side. It starts out convex on the back side, right from about halfway up to about the midfoot, and then becomes concave rather, toward the midfoot. So basically, it kind of forms a convex kind of angle, goes like this, and then a concave pattern goes like this. And what I have to assume that provides is different densities, different softness and cushiness of foam in those areas. Again, catering this to somebody who's a very neutral runner, because it's going to have, if this works the way that they want it to work, it's going to have a softer kind of medial first metatarsal area where that foot's going to be able to really relax to neutral. Myself, I'm very neutral to the point of actually supinating quite a bit sometimes. In this, we're going to talk more about that in the ride section. And as is one of the hallmarks of a Maximalist shoe, the stack heights on this are rather large. It's 25 millimeters in the heel and 21 millimeters in the forefoot, making for an actually relatively low drop shoe. 4 millimeters of drop, that's the difference in height from here to here. Really, my threshold for kind of a natural running shoe is right about 6 millimeters, and this falls nicely in that. So good job there. Now on to what I thought of the midsole. When I look into a shoe, when I first begin to review a shoe, I want to know what the manufacturer says about it. I want to know what their marketing material says about it, and I want to know how it's advertised, how they mean it to be used. Because otherwise, I'm simply applying my opinion to a blank slate, which is what I do to a certain degree, but I'm applying my opinion maybe not based around exactly what the shoe is meant for. You know, maybe this is a, let's pretend for a second that this is a track spike and I'm using it for long, steady distance runs. That doesn't make any sense. So I want to know what the marketing said. And one of the things that's interesting is that if you go to the New Balance Fresh Foam kind of microsite, it says, let's talk about the science of soft. Now, a lot of Maximalist shoes, what they do is their whole thing is exorbitant amounts of cushioning, a lot of cushioning for longer runs. Now, that's not necessarily the most responsive thing in the world all the time, and sometimes it's going to kind of move away from you if you go to give it some speed or something like that. So I was interested in this because it kept talking about the science of soft and how cushy it was and all this kind of stuff. And when I got into it, and we're going to touch more on this in the ride section, that's simply not the case with Fresh Foam. I should also mention at this point that I'm not the only one saying this. There are a lot of people out there that are saying, hey, look, the shoe feels great, and I'm going to get into that in a second, but it's not as soft as I was expecting. And again, this being my first foray into maximalism, I was expecting a ton of cushioning, but I have shoes with like half the stack height that feel far more cushy. And that's fine with me because I like a firmer shoe. I like something that's going to be responsive to me. And I really think that the marketing kind of missed the message on this. And I feel like I'm quoting so many other reviews when I say that, but it's the truth. You know, this shoe is something that really responded well. Again, we're going to talk about this in the ride section, but it's not soft. It's not that soft. I mean, like a Nike Air Zoom Vomero or something is far softer than this. But I think what might be appropriate for this is people that are looking for a long run shoe, something that's going to give cushioning over a very, very long term. This might be that because it's then still going to have that responsiveness that might otherwise be lacked in a shoe that is simply cushioning, like a pillow or something like that. As for the convex and concave sections of the shoe, I can't say that I noticed much about that. But again, as I said, I'm extremely neutral, so this is right up my alley in terms of that. And surprisingly, for the amount of foam that is on this shoe, the men's size 9, this is a size 11, the men's size 9 comes in at 9.1 ounces, so a sub 10 ounce shoe. Really well weighted. I mean, it's really nice weight for that much material underfoot. So the upper of the Fresh Foam 980 is made from a single piece of primarily a very fine mesh. It's a really great, very breathable mesh that's really, really soft and flexible, but it has a ton of durability to it. There are no quality control issues with this shoe at all. I'm going to comment about that later. You can see here the welding is all heat bonded. It's not stitched on. There are no stitches on the upper here. And what you can see is that on the mesh, as well as on that bonding, which maybe you can see there, that honeycomb structure makes another appearance. So that's where you kind of get that flexibility. That's where you get that strength and durability. The same thing that's happening in the outsole is happening up here as well. Now, it's got a pretty substantial yet still flexible heel counter back here. Forms a nice heel cup for the foot to sit in. And then the tongue internally, there are no seams, but the tongue down toward the bottom where the tongue attaches to the rest of it is completely soft. It's actually a really nice barefoot running shoe if you choose to run barefoot. I don't, but I do run one time at every shoe barefoot for the sake of being able to tell you guys what it's like. Really great interior, seamless. The Ortholite sock liner that you can see here, really super flexible. I know you could probably do this with any shoe, but this is really flexible, and it provides, it's actually quite thick, maybe you can see how thick that is, which provides a little more of that cushy feel. And what's great about it is that underneath it, should you choose to remove this to get some vertical volume in the shoe, the Strobel board, actually not the Strobel board, but there's under the sock liner a full-length piece of neoprene, that blue that you can see right in there, full-length piece of neoprene. And what that does is that it allows you to wear this barefoot like that also, because sometimes there's a seam about halfway where the different parts of the shoe are stitched together. This is a full-length neoprene Strobel board, which is very similar to what you're wearing with the sock liner anyway. For me, the upper of this shoe really knocks it out of the park. I mean, super high quality. We're going to talk about the fit here in a couple minutes, but super high quality, really great stuff that really works with the foot well. The mesh is backed by an even finer kind of silk screen mesh that really feels nice against a bare foot. The one drawback I have that is kind of, I just don't understand it, is all this excess foam. Not the foam here. We're not on that right now. We're talking about foam on the upper. First, we'll talk about the tongue. Look how puffy the tongue is. Why is the tongue so puffy? The construction and the shape and the build of this is super comfortable, and I am really confused as to why all this foam is here. It doesn't do anything to the shoe. It doesn't detract from the shoe, but it detracts in the way that it adds a little bit of weight here, maybe some water absorbency there. I don't quite understand that. And again, around the collar, right around this part here, a lot of foam. I mean, both these places could easily be half that much foam and still be really comfortable because the construction is so solid and the build is so well done. Neither of those are in any way a deal breaker for me. It just kind of adds to some perceived bulk. And a lot of times Maximalist shoes that are going to have that big stack height anyway, contend with that. They're going to have to fight against this perception that there's just a lot of stuff all over the place. And so I really don't think that all this foam is, of course some foam is necessary, but not quite as much as is on the upper of this first version of the Fresh Foam 980. So let's talk about the fit and sizing of the Fresh Foam 980. Right off, I have to say that this falls in an interesting kind of a crack for me. Generally speaking, I wear a size 11, and this is a size 11. Now, for me, a size 11 generally fits with plenty of room. I'm very comfortable in it. My toes have a lot of room to play back and forth. I never feel crowded or anything like that. But in this, I don't feel crowded. It still fits extremely well in terms of the lengthwise fit. But I would say that it fits smaller than a lot of size 11s. But it's not like a full half size larger. It's kind of right in between. So what I would suggest if you're looking at buying this shoe is go to your local run specialty shop, and try on a couple pairs just to make sure. I think you'd probably be safe in whatever size you're running in other shoes, but it does fall in a crack for me, so I have to assume that it would for some other people as well. Now, in the heel, it's great. It feels really great. I mentioned earlier that there's a substantial yet flexible heel counter. It forms a really nice cup and the foot feels very secure in it. This isn't something, I did take it on some dry trail, but it wasn't super technical, not a lot of cuts or anything like that. No steeplechasing in this. But it felt really nice and solid through the heel. The midfoot feels great, and to boot, this comes in variable widths. I think it comes in D, it comes in 2E and 4E if I'm not mistaken. So if you've got a wider foot, they do make this shoe for you also. And then up into the front part of the forefoot, plenty of room. I felt really nice and comfortable. But then I get to the toe box. What? What is going on here? What? Honestly, it's a little pointy. I don't quite understand. It's like they went, oh, this is so great. We're doing everything perfect. And bam. What? And then they just kind of really cut in on the lateral side far too soon. Now, it's not a deal breaker. It's not something that's giving me blisters or anything like that. But when I'm running in this, I do feel not rubbing. I mean, rubbing, yes, but it's not rubbing like it's going to give me a blister. But I do feel something right here. And to some people, if you've got more splayed toes than I do, you're definitely going to feel it right there, unless you're probably in a wider width or something like that. So I don't quite understand why they did this little cut in here. It seems like they just kind of skipped the end and thinking that out, because again, everything else fits so well for me. Now maybe your foot is going to fit fine and you're not going to have anything like that, but it's just interesting to me that it's like this wonderfully wide forefoot and wonderfully wide midfoot, you know, and appropriately wide midfoot, and then narrow toe box. What? Let's talk about the ride of the Fresh Foam 980. Now, as I've mentioned several times before, the shoe is not as soft as I expected. I expected a lot of cush and something that actually deadened a lot of things, and this simply didn't do that. This has a lot of great ground feel. Yeah, because of the foam, if you're going to step on a rock or something, you're probably not going to feel it quite as much. It's going to be knocked out by the level of EVA in there, but it really has pretty good ground feel. I mean, this foam is surprisingly springy, not sluggish at all, and I did put the screws to it a couple times, which for me means running about a 5:30 mile for, I don't know, not quite 5 minutes and 30 seconds. It really responded very well. I mean, the shoe is not what you would expect. I mean, you would expect something that's meant for longer mileage, and this, sure, will be great for longer mileage, but it also does a great job on speedier stuff. I was very impressed. It's not what you would think, and this is, again, where the marketing comes in, and I think they really missed the mark with that. I don't quite get it, but this is where version 2 could come in. There's so much room for some awesome stuff in version 2, and you know what? This shoe does such a great job in the first version that I can only imagine the improvements they can make with a version 2. I really enjoyed the ride of the shoe, and the one question that I would have is that if I'm Joe Schmo who's looking for something that is a truly super cushioned Maximalist shoe, and I go and I buy this, am I going to be disappointed? I'm not sure. You know, I put this on and I think it's going to be a great high mileage trainer, but it's also appropriate for speed. So I just wonder what that person thinks, what that Joe Schmo who is looking for something that is really, really cushy, what he or she is going to think of this. To me, the Fresh Foam is a really extremely well-made shoe. And by the way, I love the design. I like the colors in this version. There are 2 other colorways in the men's models. I really like everything about the design. I think that the matte finish combined with the slight honeycomb glossy overlay on the welding is really nice. Great design of the shoe, really well made. You know, all the things that I mentioned that could be changed, if you look at it, it's only like 3 things. There's not a lot that could be changed with this shoe to make it that much better. Where I think the big change would need to happen is in the messaging, in the marketing. Now, are they going to say, this is a really responsive shoe with this cushioning for a high mileage trainer? I don't know, but there's a lot of room there, because this is going to be a good shoe that I would expect to see this version or iterations of this version around for quite some time, because I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy it. It's also priced pretty well. It's set right at $109, which puts it kind of at the lower end of the meat of the high-end running shoe price range there. And the durability out of this is really, really great for that price, I think. Again, this has 60 miles on it, and there's really just not much wear going on there. So really impressive stuff. You know, I would say that if you're interested in trying this shoe on, definitely get a pair on your feet. Go for a run in them, even if it's on a treadmill or something like that, but preferably outside. Get a pair of these on your feet. Actually try them out. This is a really pretty sweet shoe, but it's not what you think it is. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Gearist TV. Don't forget to like and favorite this video and subscribe to our channel. Please also find us on all the social networks, whether it's Google+, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook. Find us on all those guys and tell us what's up. If you've got any questions or comments on this video, please let us know in the comments section below. And also, we'd love to hear from you guys. Now that summer and spring running season is upon us, what running shoes are you looking forward to running in, or what running shoes are you already running in? Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Gearist TV. Please don't forget to click that wonderful blue subscribe button right in front of your face, and also check out those other videos that are there while you're at it. Click on over to Gearist.com, take a look around, and thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.